Hello, 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 and thank you all for joining me for another this special segment of Outside the Box called Let's Talk About Relationships. For those of you who don't know, my name is Sage the Coach, your host. I'm also known as Stephanie K, and I am a certified life and relationship coach. But a lot of the podcasts that I do most of the time has to do with kind of life issues. And so my heart and my passion is really for relationships. So I felt it was only appropriate to have a special segment where I can talk about relationships. And that's where this idea came from of Let's Talk About Relationships. And so today, okay, so for those of you who don't know, I have to look at my list and make sure I'm hitting all my checkpoints. But for those of you who don't know, my live show usually airs on Saturdays at 12 p.m. I do have another show tomorrow, a replay of a past Let's Talk About Relationship show tomorrow at 7 p.m. So you guys make sure you tune in for that. And be sure that you like, share, and invite people to my page if you feel that you want to support what I'm doing or share my powerful and inspireful messages, because my aim is to help people think outside of the box so that we understand that God is bigger than our boxes. Because when we don't see outside of our boxes, we can miss God a lot. We can miss our blessings. We can miss even knowing more about ourselves and improving our relationships. And so for today, the topic that I'm discussing about relationships has to do with, it's a group of wives. So let me say that first, but it has to do with things that we wish we knew about marriage before we actually got married. And so I maybe will try to do this conversation with a group of guys. I had a Let's Talk About Relationships segment last month where me and a group of husbands talked about lessons that they learned from marriage. And then I also had another show where I talked with a group of wives about lessons that they learned from marriage. And so for this one, it's just going to be me and the ladies talking about things that we wish we would have been told about marriage before we got married. And so I think this show will be very, very critical for not only married women to have a wider perspective of their relationship and their marriage, because when you're in it, especially when it's hard and things like that, it's very easy for your mind to just focus only on the problems in the relationship. But it's also good for single women so that they can get an idea of what marriage is all about. And hopefully we can answer any questions that you ladies have about your marriage, whether you're in one or you want to be married in the future. So to discuss this topic, I have two special guests with me today, and I'll bring these ladies out now. We have Nija Drakes. I said it right. And we have Tina Crawford. So you ladies, if you want to take a few minutes to introduce yourselves, what you do and things like that. And can you add in there how long you have been married? Because I always feel that it's good for people to know where they're getting their advice from, so to speak. Because if somebody's been married for 6 months, then their marriage advice is not going to be the same as somebody who kind of have a little bit more experience. So introduce yourselves to the viewers, let them know who you are and how long you've been married.
Sure. I'm Nija Drakes. I am a clarity and purpose coach. I have been married 21 years. I am a mom of 5, a serial entrepreneur, an author, a speaker, online show host, and a graduate of Spelman College and Johns Hopkins University. And for 20 years, I worked in corporate America, doing strategic analysis for multi-million-dollar companies, helping them troubleshoot problems and analyze scores of data and increase their profits, and really help them reach the ambitious goals that they set for themselves corporately. And after 20 years of making a lot of rich men richer, I decided I wanted to shift gears and focus on helping women become more rich spiritually, physically, mentally, and emotionally, and for them to be able to walk in and become their most purposeful self.
Yes, great. Awesome. Awesome. If I'm remembering correctly, me and you have something in common that I don't usually have in common with a lot of people is the number of kids that you have. How many kids do you have?
I have 5 sons.
Oh, wow. 5 boys. I have 5 kids also. I don't meet a lot of people in that multiple kid range. But I have 4 girls and 1 boy. So we're almost on the opposite. Yeah, 5 boys. Wow. That's a lot of testosterone.
Yes, we are at the stage where our nest is emptying. We only have 1 at home now. The others are in college. So
yeah. Wow. So with that in mind, and then we'll get to Tina to introduce herself. My kids are finally going back to school since this pandemic started next month. And so I've been basically kind of homeschooling, virtual schooling with them for a year and a half. But this year, when they go back, this will be my first time not having a child under 5 in the house in almost 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know what to do with this freedom. Like, it feels weird. Like, wow. So, we'll see what happens. So I just wanted to say that. So Tina, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, I'm Tina Crawford. I have been married for 20 years and
Wow.
I have 4 kids. So
Okay.
we have 2 boys, 2 girls from 9 years old to college.
Wow.
And that's fun. I mean, it's fun. Let's see, what was I doing? I was homeschooling for the last 8 years.
Oh,
So
wow.
this is
Wow.
actually the first year that my kids are gone and going to school.
Oh, wow. We're
So
we're we're in the same boat there a little bit. Wow.
yes, so my life is changing drastically at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
Um, I am a premarital marriage and intimacy coach. So I love to talk about Jesus and I love to talk about marriage and I love to talk about sex.
Yeah.
So um, that is just it's a new adventure. I'm loving it. It's awesome. And I'm just excited to be here with you guys today. So,
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. And so, since you ladies talked about how long you've been married, I feel like I have to put mine out there too. My anniversary was actually last week. I've been married for 14 years. So, we have a lot of combined experience between all of us, especially when it comes to children. We probably need to do another show about being a mom, but that will come later too. So, but yeah, so today we're going to get into this conversation. I'm very excited about it because the thing is, like, when you're in a relationship or just in life in general, it's very easy for you to get this idea like you're the only one. You think your feelings and what you want and all that stuff is so special and so different from other people. And although there are always individual differences, a lot of the times we are having the same type of experiences. And especially when it comes to women, especially in the church, we have kind of been programmed to not really talk about our marriages very honestly. People have this idea, especially women, that being married is the goal that you want to get to. And then once you're married, it's an indication of your value. So you don't want to talk about the problems that you're having because maybe you're not a good wife or whatever. And then you have other women, you kind of in competition with other women, And so a lot of these really big marriage conversations about marriage that should be happening amongst women don't really happen like they should. I'm not saying they don't happen at all, but I know, and I put out a blog post earlier this week that it's actually an excerpt from one of my books where I talk about marriage. The book is actually called God, Why Am I Not Married? 9 Reasons You Might Still Be Single. And so in that book, I go through some of the reasons why women who are praying for a husband might not be getting their prayers answered. And so in one of the books, I talked about how our idea of marriage, like as when you're single, a lot of married women are not really telling you the truth. Because these conversations are not being had, a lot of single women don't really have a good idea of what they're getting into, even what they're praying for when it comes to marriage. And so I really want to have this conversation, not only to hear some of you ladies' experiences, but to give people some insight into what marriage is really, really all about. And so before I jump into like going into the conversation, I want to ask you ladies, do you have any comments or anything about what I said, or what is your experience when it comes to women actually genuinely talking about marriage and especially in the Christian community?
I wish it was done a lot more. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more that we should be talking about marriage much more in the church and not just faking it. And there's a lot of that happening where people are smiling in the church and then going home, or even probably on the car ride home, right? It's a long ride back to the house, right? To go back to the status quo. And so, that's not glorifying God. He is an authentic God. He is a God that wants us to show up authentically. And part of our act of worship, we actually worship him through the way we do marriage. I mean, he tells us that essentially that your marriage is a way to glorify him, right? Exactly. It reflects him. It reflects our relationship that we have with him. And so when we just come to church and pretend like everything is all great, we're really not being authentic and being truthful in the house of God. So for
Mm.
me, I think it's critical. The Bible speaks about us, older women are supposed to talk to the younger wives. That's actually stated very clearly that it's part of our responsibility to do. And so I couldn't agree with you more. We need to be having more of these conversations. I love that Tina's going to talk about sex, because if you want to talk about that stuff, don't do it before you get married. That's about what you hear. So
Right.
I'm happy that you are facilitating this conversation today, because it's really necessary.
Yeah, thank you so much. And again, I appreciate, and I want to say this really quickly, because yes, you should, like, it's one thing to not talk about marriage. There's another thing to talk to everybody about your marriage. Like and there is some validity in trying to protect your marriage, like you should, and you should not be talking to everybody about your marriage. You really have to go to those people, like you said, Nija, that the older people in the church, the women who have a reputation or have a track record with marriage, that you kind of rely on their advice. So don't take this to mean go talk to everybody about your marriage, or don't say to your husband, see, I told you we need to go be talking to people about our marriage. No, you don't always need to just talk. You got to find the right people, find the right church, find the right community, and things like that. So yeah, that's what I want to say about that. So what do you think about that, Tina? What is your experience? And I'm actually happy that it's not just a panel of Black women here. I like that you are a white lady in the conversation, because the more perspective and experience you get, the better. It
Right.
always widens your perspective. So I'm really interested to hear what your take is on the way Christian community talks about marriage from your perspective, is what I want to say.
Well, so I was really going to really just speak into what you were saying for a second before about not talking to everybody about our marriage, right? But talking about our marriage and bashing our marriage are two totally different things, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, I think it's really important for the healthy marriages to be talking about that and how they're getting to that, and sharing that, especially with younger couples, like Nigel was saying. But it's the bashing part, right? I mean, it's the not taking self-responsibility, but just blaming your spouse, and then you're perpetuating more problems by doing that. And so when you're seeking help from and guidance from other people, it has to be about, this is what we are experiencing, right, as husband and wife, not this is what my spouse is doing to me or not doing for me.
Yeah.
And so there's just that difference in that. But I mean, obviously I think it needs to be talked about. I 100% think it needs to be talked about. We can get into it more, but I was married when I was 18 and pregnant and in the church, and
wow.
Yeah, it needs to be talked about.
Yeah, wow. So I guess we can jump right into the conversation here. And one thing I kind of want to start off with us is, I want to go around and kind of talk about some crucial lessons that you learned from. Now, I don't say crucial lessons that you learned, but now that you've been married for 20 plus years, I'm the baby in the group when it comes to marriage years. What are some things that you wish you would have been told all this time later that would have helped you in the beginning? And so, Nija, you can go ahead and kind of go with the first thing that you learned, and then we'll kind of discuss that, and then we'll go back around with a second thing that we learned if we have time for that.
Yeah. I've learned so many things
exactly.
in the 21 years. So it was hard for me to even narrow in on exactly what I wanted to talk about. But I think the biggest thing that nobody told me was that marriage is really a classroom. I really think that, a marriage is designed to grow, right? But it can only grow if the two people are growing. So how do you go about being purposeful about growing in your marriage? No one told me that I needed to be purposeful about growing in my marriage, right? That I needed to get prepared to be schooled in marriage, right?
Exactly.
Because if any institution will teach you something, it is the institution of marriage. If you are not learning about yourself, about others, about the good parts of you and the great parts of you, each and every day, being connected to another person and being in relationship with another person, I gotta ask, are you really in marriage?
Exactly. Exactly.
Every day you are getting a grade, right? It's like needs improvement, unsatisfactory. Like seriously, it was I did not realize that I needed to use marriage as an opportunity to learn. And many times I think I looked at situations and kind of thought of it as, well, like he should do this, and if he just did this, and if he, and it really was as I grew into it, realized, okay, what was my contribution to this, right? Did I contribute to this? Am I positioning myself to build up the marriage or tear it down with my next steps based on what happened, right? And so it really was an opportunity for me to really learn some ugly truths about myself, to be honest. And in doing that, I realized that I needed to use those experiences in marriage to identify shortcomings that I had personally, and then purposefully go out to address them. Podcasts, therapists, books, all the things. Since the beginning of our marriage, beyond premarital counseling, we have had mentors and pastors, and we have gone on the marriage retreats. That's something we need to regularly and purposefully be doing. And when I talk to women and they want to live a more purposeful life and they're married, I say, well, what purposeful things are you doing in order to have a purposeful marriage? Because it's not just gonna happen. I think that's what I wish somebody had told me. Like, I just thought you just kind of get married, y'all love each other, it's beautiful, you have the Huxtables, or Mary Tyler Moore, you have like some magical thing that you see on television. You got Jerry Maguire on there talking about you complete me. I'm thinking, oh, it's nothing like that. So I think for me, really just understanding that marriage is an opportunity for you to grow and learn about yourself and how to engage with others, I think was something that I wish someone had told me.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's a big one right there. And I like what you said at first. There is a lot. So anybody watching this, do not think by any stretch of the imagination that this is everything. This is a conversation that can be had over and over and over again for probably the next 50 years, and you still don't necessarily cover everything, because we are complicated beings. We were created by a magnificent God. He is not simple by any means. And so we are complicated beings. We don't really understand ourselves. So when you add another person into the picture, and then kids into the picture, and then jobs, I mean, there's a lot that goes into what produces a good or bad marriage. And so this is just the tip of the iceberg. But like you said, Naija, you have to be purposeful in not only growing yourself, but trying to pinpoint what those things are. Like, it's not just for you to kind of sit back and receive all the love and then give it out when you feel like it, and then that's it. And so very, very true. So Tina, what do you think about what Naija is saying about her experience with what she learned or what she wished somebody told her?
I mean, amen. That's kind of one of the exact things I was going to talk about, actually. A lot of my time spent in coaching wives when they're separate from their husbands is intentionality, right? And so you can do whatever you want to do and say whatever you want to say, but unless your intentions behind the actions or the words are, I want edifying, Christ-like, right? Like with those purposes, you're not going to get very far. And it all goes back to that same learning and growing together. It has to happen. And when it stops happening, you got a new roommate. I just wrote a blog yesterday, actually.
Basically, you got a roommate.
Someone stole my husband and left me a roommate. And that's what happens when you lose your intentionality, whether it be your communication, your time together, right? I thought I was 18 when I got married, and I'm like, yes, we don't have to find time for each other anymore. We're going to live in the same house. We're going to see each other all the time. This is just going to be like so awesome. And then it's like, you have a new baby and you've got work. And I'm like, I saw you more like when we were intentionally going on dates and finding the time to see each other. And so being married doesn't necessarily mean you have more time together.
Yeah.
You might
Yeah.
Yes.
see the other person, but you're not, that doesn't equate to quality time. And so being intentional in how you're seeing your spouse. I mean, I can't tell you, the majority of my women are, we don't spend time together. We're on our phone, we're on our computer, you know, he's playing video games, or I'm doing, you know, tucking the kids in bed, or whatever it is. And it's like, yes, yeah, like that's gonna happen unless you're making that time and being intentional to create time, which a lot of times is step one in my marriage coaching is, okay, tell me about your evening. We're going to break it down and you're going to make intentional time. And so we recreate this intentional time for all the things Nigel was talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
It's so funny because when you were, I had as my second point, I had too many people are just too busy to be married.
Yeah.
I mean, like you never think you're too busy to be married, but I don't think anybody told me that. I just thought, all right, you got your life, I got my life, then we get married and we have our lives. Like I did not realize how much you now need to now have a life together. Like you can't just keep doing the things you were doing. Hey, I'm going to keep the same job I had. Yeah, I'm going to keep the same job I have. I'm going to keep the same career goals I had. Yeah, me too. Okay, that's great if it works. But if you're putting in 12 hours a day at work and then you come home and you got to do, like you were talking about, Tina, your family responsibilities, like how much time, this is not complicated math. This is not calculus. This is basically, 24 minus everything else and what's really left for you in the marriage. And many times we're so tired, we don't even put in the time after that. Exactly. So I think, we work hard for raises, we work hard for promotions and performance reviews and bonuses and all this stuff, not really understanding that what really matters is the results that happen at home. Like, at the end of the day, them promotions and bonuses are not going to bring you peace. They're not going to bring you overall satisfaction. It makes me think of a scripture that says, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? Lose the soul of your marriage and you gain the whole world. I'm sorry, that's not really a competition for me.
I mean, it doesn't give you fulfillment at the end of the day. Like it doesn't, because as much as we have to work, of course, that was a punishment handed down to us by God for our being a falling. But so we have to work, but he never intended for our lives to revolve around that. And I think, especially in this day and age, and I can't compare it to another day and age because I wasn't alive then, but it seems to me that we are very, very busy. I know, like I told you ladies before we started, my husband is from Africa. And so when I went over there to visit him, there was a big difference between the pace of life there and the pace of life here in America. Like I was actually able to kind of slow down and kind of do things. But in America, or when I'm at home and I have, a lot of kids, it's always, what time is it? What time? Okay, I got to do this. I got to make sure this get done. I got to make sure they get done. And so it's very, very easy to get caught up in all the things that we have to do and starting to neglect and even take for granted those relationships that are actually way, way more important than the stuff that you have to do. And so with saying that, I wanted to kind of bring in the connection that two things. One about marriage is that, like what you were saying, it's a classroom, is that, and it functions as a mirror, because there are things that you will never see about yourself if you stay by yourself that you will start to see about yourself when you get married. And I think that was one of the biggest reasons that God created marriage and even relationships in the first place, and why he said it wasn't good for Adam to be alone. It wasn't because Adam was lonely, like a lot of people say, but Adam can't grow by himself. Like you can't see yourself. Like how are you going to grow if you can't even see yourself? So you have to see yourself through somebody else's eyes, because we will always see ourselves from a biased perspective and think that we're fine and we're the greatest and we do this and that. But when you get a connection with somebody that you deeply love and they start kind of pointing out things or saying things, or you see how your behavior affects that person, now it's time for you to take a look at yourself. And And a lot of the times people don't do that. They just keep their focus on the other person. But it's really for you to look at you. And if you look at you and you're honest about what's going on with you, and you let God work with you to change whatever has surfaced in that relationship, a lot of the times the way he works with you on that, you can come back to the table with a totally different attitude, totally different perspective, healed in an area that you probably didn't know was an issue. And then your behavior, your attitude, and how you contribute to that marriage changes the environment of the marriage. And so you don't even realize the power that you have, that you're kind of reflecting into the marriage. And so I totally agree that marriage is a classroom. But we in our fallen state look at it like what I want, what I need, what somebody's going to give me. We don't look at it like, okay, now it's time to learn something, And so even the Bible talks about it's better to be single, because once you get married, it's like the gloves are off. It's no more hiding some certain things, no more just kind of skating by. You actually have to address some deep things about yourself, and not always just focusing on what your partner is doing. Because I will even add to that if you work on the stuff that you're seeing about yourself, it usually can become inspirational to now your spouse to work on their stuff, because now they see, oh wow, she didn't yell at me this time, so and she didn't storm out this time, she didn't do this. And now they are able to sit back and reflect and say, okay, well, maybe I should, or maybe I should, And so to me, that is like one of the basic things about marriage. And I want to say this one more thing, and then we'll move on to the next point, is what you ladies are saying about effort, like intentionality. And Nigel, you said this before about marriage kind of being a reflection of our relationship with God, which I totally agree. And we can get so busy that we not only neglect our marriages and relationships, but we also neglect God. Like we don't pray as much as we go. God, I got to do this, I got to do that, and you kind of start pushing your relationship with God by the wayside. But everything it takes to maintain a relationship with God is exactly the same thing it takes to maintain a relationship with your spouse. But you have to put in the effort. You have to do it. If you don't, all the love in the world is not going to make that marriage grow. Like, it's just like having a seed and you just leave it on the ground and then you're expecting it to grow into something. It's not going to happen. You have to plant it. You have to water it. It needs sun. It needs that. And so you can have all the love, like you said, the feelings, Tina, and everything. But if you're not working and putting in that effort to grow that thing, it is not going to grow. It is a universal principle. The seed and sowing principle, you have to put the effort in to tend to that thing, whether God, in marriage, or whatever. So totally agree with you ladies on that one. That has also been one of my biggest experiences, and it's not an easy lesson to learn.
Definitely not.
No, it's not. And so, but when you do, you become more mature, more, a lot of things. So let's move on to the next thing. So Tina, I know you kind of piggybacked off of what Nija said. And you said she was kind of talking about some things that you were kind of wanted to talk about. But did you have something else that you wish you would have known before marriage that you think would have helped?
Yeah, I wish that I would have known that I didn't have to keep a bottle of Tylenol by my bed in case I had a headache. I just always remember, man, the women in my life telling me that, right? Like, and you have a bridal shower, and what I got like 5 bottles of Tylenol. Right?
Oh my goodness! Just
letting me know I'm not going to want to have sex all the time, and so I got a headache, babe. Like, that's just kind of the excuse that we were taught. So with that, yeah, I mean, I wish that I knew that, biblically speaking, that sexual intimacy was just as much for me as it was for my husband. Because I think the church doesn't do it on purpose. But I really believe that we're taught, without explicitly being said, that our husbands need sex and we don't. We don't have to like it even, right? And you will hear a lot that women don't. And so then there's even this expectation of, I'm not going to. So it's just, I'm just going to have to deal with it. And that is just like not true.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important for especially new wives, like going into getting married, to know Like, God created sex for man and wife. He created it to be great, fun, exploratory, exciting, all these things. And you can go to Song of Songs, right? And you can open it chapter 1, verse 1. The woman is the pursuer.
Yeah.
Like, she is going after her man. And to me, that is like just such a huge thing, right? To show that she was seeking him out. And they're engaged in the beginning. So, but once they get married, you still see her being the one who's pursuing and the one who's longing to touch his body and to explore his body and all these things. And so we don't talk about that. We don't talk about, like, yeah, ladies, go have some fun. Like, enjoy your time with your husband. But the note that I wrote to talk about, because I was afraid I would forget, really was, I wish somebody had told me that sex was going to cause the most arguments in my marriage more than anything else.
Wow.
So, quantity, mostly speaking about quantity, and the hurt that it causes. I didn't realize even the damage that I was causing by kind of brushing him off, or nah, I don't really feel like it, or why do you want it all the time, right? Because we get into these places, and I didn't realize the damage I was doing to not only his ego as a husband, to his heart, making him feel undesired and unwanted, and that he was doing something wrong. And it took a long time for me to learn that it was my mindset and the way that I was viewing that time together as being for him. Well, I'm doing it for him. And so when I learned that it's just as much for me,
the clouds of heaven opened.
It just changes. I mean, it changes your marriage so much if you can have a healthy sexual, intimate part of your marriage. It just changes the way you talk to each other. It changes the time in between in the day, right? Like when you feel wanted and desired by someone, you want and desire them back. I mean, that's a regular emotion to have. And so you're touching and you're hugging and you're walking by with a smile instead of a scowl. And it just changes so much of how, you're interacting together, even outside of that bedroom space. So I wish someone would have said, Tina, don't listen to what you've heard all these years. God made men and women sexual beings and made it for both of you to enjoy and to find that, together, because it's different for everyone.
Yeah. Wow. That's a powerful one right there. Like, oh my goodness. Nigel, what do you have to say about what Tina said?
It's so funny. It's clear we've been married a while, because that was on my list. I'm like, have good sex and have a lot of it. I think that's really important. But I also think that for women, it's important for us to understand that we need to create a space for intimacy in our marriage, because the way women are kind of wired is different than men. They can get to the physical place a lot faster and without a lot of prep time, right? Whereas we need not just foreplay physically, but we need foreplay spiritually, emotionally, mentally, all the things before we're like, okay, now I'm excited, right?
Right.
I think what no one told me was that we needed to create a space for intimacy, create a safe space where we both would be able to feel vulnerable enough such that when you get to the physical aspect, it's climatic because of all of this massaging, right, that happened before we even got to that physical place, right? You connected with me in a way, you saw me in a way, you listened to me in a way that we both want to show up, right, in the bedroom in a way that reflects that. And so nobody told me that. I grew up very similar to Tina, these men, you got to do these, your wifely responsibilities, like something on the to-do list you checked off. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun. But then as time went on and we began to understand how beautiful and adventurous and it could be in a very safe place, where you are not just naked physically, but naked in every other regard. There's
Amen.
nothing like it. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. It
it's
just
not.
can't compete with single life sex. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
It's way better.
Yeah, yeah.
Should
It's
be.
yeah, and it's funny that well, it's not funny, but one of the things where you said it's nothing like it. One of the things that to me has come close to it is when I'm engulfed in this God's spirit. Like that's the only thing to me that has come close to that. And so sometimes I was afraid to like say it because I didn't want people to think like I'm a pervert. Like when you feel God's spirit,
No.
doesn't it feel
Yeah.
like
Yes, it is. It is a high. It is a
Yeah, and then
out
when
of
you
body
have,
experience.
then when you have both at the same time,
yeah.
like,
And so it's really a experience that, like you again, Naja, you hinted towards it before. It's a reflection of God's relationship with us. He gave us that experience so that we can understand what it means to spiritually connect with him, because we don't, of course, have the physical connection with God. And I'm not going to go too far into that because people's minds won't stay in the right place. But it's a way for us to experience what the depth of what that spiritual connection can be. And so you experience that in marriage, like you said, Naja, in a safe place and things like that. And we do, as women, get a lot of, as we get old, grow up. And it doesn't even start from adulthood. It's like from a kid, you just get this idea that sex is for men. It's for men. It's for men. It's not for women. And whether you enjoy it or not, hey, do what you have to do. You have to keep your husband happy or he's going to go look elsewhere, kind of a thing. And you're not really taught very much about your needs as a sexual being, and that is even okay for you to have them, because it becomes like this taboo thing. Even if you do have it, it's like you're being wild or whorish or something like that. And so what kind of stands out to me, what you ladies were saying about the impression that you get growing up about what sex is. A lot of women struggle to even enjoy it, not just from what they have been told, but they have been abused before. They have some issues when it comes to it. Like a lot of women are, unfortunately, rape statistics are very high, molestation statistics are very high. And then you carry, and I won't even, aside from trauma, when you have multiple partners before you even get married, all of those things you carry into the marriage, and they can affect your ability to connect with your partner, especially because you have sexually, because you have a lot of baggage there. These are deep spiritual things, and whether you're consciously aware of how it's affecting you, it is affecting you. And so you might feel like, but I don't want to do it. And I've heard some women say, well, if he loves me, he should be okay that I don't want to do it. Like he shouldn't try to force me, anything like that. And Tina, you kind of talked about it. You have to change your perspective, because it's not about him forcing you. Like if you're looking at it that way, of course you're going to have that response, and then you're going to be even more reluctant. Like, well, why can't he? Why can't he? You have to change your understanding of it, and usually that misunderstanding comes from your previous experiences and what you have been told about sex. And women really don't get that kind of education to understand themselves on that level. And it's really, really unfortunate. And I think damages marriages a lot. Probably it's one of the top 3 reasons, in my opinion. Yep. Yeah. And so it's really important, like you say, Tina, when you do have that connection and you do feel comfortable. I think both of you ladies talked about that vulnerability, the ability to be vulnerable. And I mean, because like you said, exploration and even adventure requires you to be comfortable and trusting of the person that you're in this very vulnerable situation with. And when you can get to that point with another person, it's like you ladies said, it's nothing like it, and that experience. And even for you to have a husband who might understand some of your barriers, and you guys talk about it and kind of figure out, okay, how can we work this? Even those things can be foreplay, because he's trying to understand you. You guys can have an open conversation, things like that. And it can really help to get to a place for you to understand that the beauty of God and his nature, by understanding that he created this for you to enjoy too. So I totally agree with that. I see a lot of single women who think, oh, once I get married, I'm going to be having sex all the time. it's going to be easy. We're going to be right there. And then after a year, you're looking at him like, can you stop? Like, just go away, or, so there's a lot of issues when it comes to that. And again, we could talk about that for probably 50 more episodes. So did you ladies have anything else you wanted to add to that?
I was really just going to touch really quick on the, how many wives we talk to that, it's dirty, right? Well, I can't do that. Or they can't get past the past teachings, especially within the church, of sex is bad. And then all of a sudden you're married and you're supposed to be like sex goddess.
Yeah.
And you don't know how to switch from sex is bad, don't do it, it's dirty, good girls don't do that. All of those things over to this. And so then a lot of women aren't satisfied. I mean, there, I said it. We'll just be honest.
Yeah, it's true. And then they don't want to do it.
Yeah. Many wives were like, well, it's not that good for me. But ladies, if you can understand, your husband will be so turned on if you say, this is what I like. Can you please learn this? Like, this is what, but there's so much fear in that and being vulnerable in that, because we've grown up thinking it's wrong. We're not supposed to have those feelings or think those things. And so you're selling yourself short. And you're not just selling yourself short, you're selling your spouse short. Like neither one of you are getting this experience you should be having if you're holding back and not enjoying, especially if you know what you need to enjoy and you're not sharing.
If you're not saying,
saying it.
Yeah.
So step out. Be brave. Say it. I mean, you'll be so surprised.
Yeah, I don't want to say, anyway, we're going along with Naija, did you have anything you wanted to add to what Tina just said?
I think for me, as you were just talking, I just started thinking in general how this idea of focusing primarily on the husband and the physical relationship actually shows up in other areas of our lives. I think a lot of times as women, as wives, we come to the table thinking that a large part of our role is to be a wife and to satisfy our husbands, often at the neglect and at the sacrifice of ourselves. And as I coach women in both individual and group sessions, I am focused on, what does a purposeful life look like for you? Because if you're not living a purposeful life as a woman, you're not going to be able to come to the table and live a purposeful life as a wife.
Yeah.
Because you've got to essentially get to a place where you are satisfied, where you are fulfilled, where you are pursuing the gifts that God has placed within you, that you are seeing yourself as treasure in earthen vessels, right? Before you can look at your marriage in that way. And I just started thinking about, the fruits of the Spirit. And we always think about the fruits of the Spirit as something that, I don't know, we just kind of talk about it in a vacuum. But if you don't have the fruits of the Spirit in your manifesting in you as an individual, they're not going to show up in your marriage. Most of us want a joyful, patient, peaceful, self-controlled marriage. But if you're not joyful and peaceful and patient and all self-controlled, it's not going to be able to show up in your marriage. And so I wish that someone had told me that I needed to spend time purposefully on doing the things that God called me as an individual to do, because there is work for me individually as a woman to do, in addition to the work that I do as a wife, as a mom, as an employee or an entrepreneur. And so I would say, I see that show up just not just in the bedroom, but in our lives in general, that we don't take the time to care for ourselves in a purposeful way so that we can then care for everybody else, right?
Yeah. And that's a really good point, because a lot of these things they're not isolated. They are all connected, and they all become somewhat reflections of or feed off of each other. Tina went to grab her charger really quick, just so anybody watching knows, and Naija, she's be back in a minute. But a lot of these things are connected, and I think that's one of the things about marriage, that you learn how things about you are connected to the decisions that you make and how you treat people and things like that. And God kind of using the marriage to show you those things and put you in an environment where you can grow from them. And so anything that you are experiencing, I kind of mentioned a little bit before, when you're struggling with, intimacy, it's from something you were told. It's from an experience that you had. It's from a lot of the times how you feel and treat yourself. And so you have to deal with you, and and not always, again, it's the other partner. Well, maybe if he didn't want it, or maybe something's wrong with him because he wants it. You have to look at you and work on you. And when you do that, that is how you grow in a marriage. Because you said, Elijah, when we first started, that you have to grow individually. And then as you grow individually, the marriage actually grows automatically. It's not something that is like so difficult to do when you're making sure you have what you need first to even give to the relationship. You do still have to be intentional, don't get me wrong, because you're not going to feel like it all the time. But a lot of that process, like I said, is connected. It starts with you first, and it starts with you and your relationship with God, your damage, your issues, and things like that. And as you work through those, you start to see a change that gets reflected in your environment, including your husband, your kids, your house, and things like that. And one second. We have Stephanie watching here. She says, yes, I didn't find out my purpose until late in my marriage. I spent a lot of years jealous of my spouse and the things God was doing with him because I hadn't found and been living my purpose. Wow, that's really deep. I have been there somewhat because I was stuck in the house with kids. Yeah. And I'm ambitious. Like I want to accomplish things. I have some people who would say, why can't you just be, because my husband, he makes good money, he takes care of everything. And it's like, well, why you can't just be happy in the house with kids? Because that's not me. Like I have a message, I have stuff I want to do. And I was stuck in the house with kids, and I was just like, oh, he's just rising here and doing, and I can't do anything. So I totally agree with you, Stephanie, with that. I experienced that as well. And then she also says, we definitely need to spend time before marriage learning ourselves and allowing God to tell us what our purpose is and walk in it. Your spouse won't be able to fulfill all your needs. Absolutely. Absolutely. Did you ladies have anything you wanted to say about what Stephanie put in the comments?
I mean, she's right, but spouses weren't made to fulfill our needs.
Yeah.
You know, when we talk about finding our purpose, I think that's probably an important point to break up, is that that's not your spouse's purpose.
Exactly.
To fulfill your needs. To be your partner. Yeah. To grow together. Yeah. Support.
Look, and sometimes they don't even do that. So
that is true.
Yeah. So, but you have to be okay, because if they are your source, then if they don't do what they're supposed to, then you're not okay. They're not supposed to be your source. So if they do it, great. Thank God. If they don't do it, great. Thank God. I'm okay, because God is your source, not them. And then you give God time to kind of work on them and help them to grow in their role in the marriage too, because it is a growing process for everybody. And everybody starts at different places, ends at different places, goes through different things to get there. So absolutely. Naja, did you have anything you wanted to comment on about what Stephanie said?
Not necessarily about what Stephanie said, but I just want to make sure that I bring this out before we go, because I did not know. Well, I wish someone had told me that a couple that plays together stays together.
Yes, amen.
We did not. You're at basketball games and soccer games and all these things, and you're caught up in making this life together and dealing with a lot of serious matters, right, that have to be handled, like bills and stuff like that no one really wants to do. There's so much adulting involved. And I realized that in the periods where our relationship kind of had bumps in the road, a lot of times it coincided with times that we had not purposefully spend fun time together.
Mm.
I mean fun. I'm not
Mhm.
talking about even just the date, unless you're laughing and kiki and
Right.
I'm not talking about just going to the movies and watching. I'm talking about get on the go-kart, go to the skating rink and fall on your butt and laugh at each other. I mean, I'm talking about, and it doesn't even have to involve leaving the house. I'm talking about jumping on the bed, having a pillow fight. I am serious. These are the kinds of things that are important, because when you get to the point where you're angry and something went awry in the marriage, if you just had a pillow fight with that person the night before, I promise you, you are not going to be as angry as them. You're not going to be as angry, because you're like, this is the same dude that just like tickled me down to the ground. Like, so you kind of are able to see that person in a lighter light and look beyond exactly what is happening in the moment, because you have a history of playfulness and enjoyment and excitement, and you know that if you could laugh together, you might even be able to make light of this situation. And so I would say, and people who know me, like, I'm a silly gal, like, I'm like, you gotta be silly. I'm gonna do the silly things, the outrageous stuff that people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that, girl. That's how we stay happy and married. So I mean,
absolutely, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Tina, did you want to add anything to what Nisha said?
No, that was awesome. I agree 100%. We are always doing really ridiculous stuff up in here.
Yeah.
You're happier. He's happier.
You just gotta do it, and it's hard sometimes.
Like after you just finished yelling at the kids, yeah,
it is hard. It is hard sometimes, and you know, I tell my little secret, but I mean, I gotta go into the bathroom sometimes after the kids are in bed, and I gotta like do one of these, and I gotta like put on some lip gloss, and I gotta kind of be like, okay, Tina, okay,
get into it, yeah.
You're gonna be a wife right now, so like drop the mom stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Like, I have to like self prep. Like I have to like get myself like, okay, you're switching, right? Like mom, okay, wife.
Yeah.
And that's what it takes, is just, it's that same thing, right? Like intentionality is my favorite word. I have to be intentional to be ready to have fun, Nija. Like I have to be ready to be done with my stress of the day to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think what's important, because you know, as women, we do have a tendency to kind of lean more to our feelings, but I think it's important to like recognize that you can do that. Like you could be like frustrated with the kids and then say, okay, I'm done with that now, let me be a wife. Like we get sometimes so caught up in how we feel and we're frustrated, and then we want to come and talk to our husband about it, and he's like, hey, I just had a rough day too. Like, I don't want to talk about that, and you need somebody to, but you can say, you know what, I'm going to put that aside for now. I know, you know, and so we do have the power to do that. One of the big things that I like to address in my coaching and my books and everything is the power of the mind. Like we have a powerful mind. And I always say that the mind that we have is a godlike quality. There's no other living thing on the earth that has the ability to reason and self-reflect and stuff like we do. And so a lot of the things that God is telling us to do, even in the process of growing in the marriage, is to grow our minds, to, you know, renew your mind. And so you can control your mind and turn that off and say, okay, even if you have to, because it's not easy all the time, I will admit, you might have to talk to God and say, okay, God, I'm not in the right mood right now, but I need to do this. Help me do this, you know. But we can do that. And it's important to understand that we don't always have to chase our feelings down a rabbit hole every time we don't feel something. And there's nothing wrong with that, you know, because I've even met some women that feels like that will feel like, well, if they have to do that and they can't talk to their husband right now, he doesn't love them, you know, stuff like that. It's like, no, that's not what it's about. And you don't always have to take that negative view of things. Your husband is a human being just like you are. He's not the God or whatever. And so give him some grace and understand that it doesn't have anything to do with that. And like Nija said, if you guys have those good memories and experiences, sometimes those are the very things you need to draw on and say, okay, he's not being what I want him to be right now, but I know he loves me. We were just pillow fighting yesterday, you know? And so it kind of helps you, you know, harness the power of your mind and switch your focus. Yeah.
But it goes both ways, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know if you guys totally understand your husband's jobs and everything that they entail, but I certainly don't. I mean, I wish I could be a fly on the wall so I can kind of see what he does and try to understand better. but I don't always want to hear him talking about work.
Yeah.
So like, why do I think that he always wants to hear my complaints about, and then I have friends who say, well, they're his kids too, so he should want to hear about what's going on with them. And he does, but not every little annoying thing that happened that day. And so I have to remind myself, like, sometimes I sit there when he's talking about work and I'm like, right. And so why do I get mad?
Yeah, absolutely.
If that's his response to me, but I have the same one.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we forget, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're to be honest, we're all selfish by nature.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, and so it takes for you to be kind of real with yourself and extend the same grace you give to yourself to give it to other people, including your husband when he's driving you nuts and not doing what you want him to do. Absolutely.
Yeah, because we drive them nuts.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, at least I know I
Absolutely. Yeah. What you were saying though, Sage, made me think about we in the good times, I think it is the perfect time to set up sort of what the rules of engagement are going to be for your marriage. I think so often we don't have boundaries in marriage. Like we don't even know you're supposed to have boundaries in marriage. That we don't kind of talk about what is the standard for our marriage. How are we going to handle arguments? How are we going to handle disagreements? We often will talk about how we're going to raise the kids, right? We talk about that, but really having conversations about how are we going to engage with each other? Like when I'm angry and I'm at my last, like, how do we talk? Do we scream? Do we yell? Do we, and when someone yells, then what's the next step of that, right? Do you walk away? Do we say we're going to table it? Like you've got to essentially put those things on the table so that everybody is clear. I think a lot of times when people talk about communication, I think that there's a lot of talking, but a lot of it's not clear.
Yeah.
So put it out on the table and say, clear, let's make it very clear. Okay. Something bad happens in the relationship, let's talk about it and let's have a clear understanding that can't happen again. Okay. So the next time that happens, this is going to be my response. That's how you set clear boundaries. But I didn't even know I was supposed to do that. Nobody told me that you set boundaries in relationships. I thought you just do whatever they use. I don't know.
It just
so yeah. And so I had, let me see, I had 2 points. I had 2 things that I want to say I wish I knew about marriage, but we're running out of time. So now I have to choose one. But maybe, okay, so I'll mention the first one, but then we can discuss the second one. So I don't want to go into like a lot of discussion about the first one. But so the first one I would say is it takes two. And the reason why I say this is because I had the idea that I was going to be a good wife and I was going to make the marriage last. And I didn't realize that if you do everything right, which is not possible, if your other spouse is not contributing, vice versa. I've seen, guys who you feel like you're carrying the whole marriage. You cannot do that. Like you feel like, oh, I just have to be this for her and do this for her and do that for that. And then one day it's going to work out. Or, in my own thinking, I'm just going to do this and be this great, great wife and everything is going to work out. And then when problems come and they keep coming and then you don't understand where they're coming from, you don't address the actual issue that needs to be addressed right away. And so, or in the right way. And so it definitely takes two. So I'm saying this for all those people who feel like, the marriage lasting or whatever is on them. Like if I do this, if I just keep doing this, if I just keep forgiving, if I just keep doing, then the marriage will last. It's not about you. It absolutely takes two. Your other partner has to be on board. I actually think it's a little bit of prideful thinking in a sense, because you're making everything more about you and what you can do and what you can't, and you're not really giving the part, because if you have that mentality, I'm sure it's going to affect your partner in some way where they might not do all the stuff that they should do because you're trying to do everything. So you have to understand that it takes two. Give your partner space to contribute to the marriage too. And that even if you do everything right, which again is not possible, unless you have a spouse that is actively contributing into the marriage and you both are doing it together, it can still fail woefully. So that was one of the things I wanted to say. But the second one that I actually would like for us to discuss a little bit before we leave here is that I forgot. I just I was just
The
I
beauty
was
of live TV. The beauty of live TV.
Okay, so Naja, I mean, what was the last thing we were talking about? Is you were talking about
having rules of engagement and boundaries in your marriage,
okay,
and that it's important for you to kind of establish those after the pillow fight.
yeah.
Yes.
Look, that's
Not
the best time. That's the best
like
time.
when you're angry, like, and you know what the rules are gonna be now. Now you know that's not the time. If that's how you, that's not when you want to set up the rules.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So you reminded me of my other point. So the other thing that I wish I was told about marriage beforehand is that everything that my husband does is not about me. So I think a lot of the time women do that. Like, even if your husband comes home in a bad day, somehow you make it about you. Like, well, why are you not, and it's a lot of times it has nothing to do with you. Even the way he responds to you, even if he's being mean, even if he's being kind, which is usually not an issue. So that's probably not a good example. But everything your husband does is not about you. It comes from the upbringing that he already had, how he already sees stuff, how he already does stuff, how he thinks. And again, it's just, you just reflect that into the relationship. And so I think where a lot of women go wrong in marriage is taking what their spouse does personally, as if it has something to do with them. Most of the time, the way people treat other people is like 99% of the time about that person and what they're dealing with and what they believe. And they're just doing, it's like our minds operate on an operating system. And so whatever the operating system is, that determines how we act, what we do, things like that. That operating system was created before the person even knew you. So when they respond to you in a certain way and you think it's about you, or you take it personal, why is he treating me like this? Why? And so you kind of have to take yourself out of the equation and say, what is going on with him? This has nothing to do with me, in a sense, especially the way he's reacting. And so you have to kind of understand what is going on with him, and not necessarily, because there have been times I even pray, say, okay, God, what is going on with my husband? Because I don't know. But if you keep thinking it's about you, even if God tries to tell you what the problem is, you're not going to hear it, because you are focused on it being you. And a lot of times it's not you, it's them. Just like the way that you act a lot of times in relationship, it's not about your husband. It's about you and what you think and how you feel and the expectation that you had that are not being met, and you're just reflecting them onto him. And so that has helped me a lot, because even in times where, and again, a lot of these things that we're talking about, I'm sure for both of you ladies, they have been hard lessons to learn. This has also been a hard lesson to learn for me, because I used to take the things that he did personally. I kind of thought they were about me. I am a little bit of a sensitive person. And so it's very easy, like if somebody's in a bad mood, I will be affected by that, especially if they're around me and I kind of want to help them, stuff like that. And for me to make it about me. So if he's in a bad mood, did I do something? Or did I do something? And so it has helped me a lot to not always think that whatever he does has to do with me. Even if he says something I don't like, it doesn't really have a lot to do with me. And I'm repeating myself. So you ladies, do you feel like that's a lesson that you've kind of had to learn too? Or what do you think about that?
I think you got to listen beyond your ears. I think you got to have discernment, and hear the heart of the person that you married. At the end of the day, we know these men and they know us better than anybody in the entire world. We know their shortcomings. We know where the bodies are buried. We know all the things, right? And so you got to take all that into consideration when things are going down. It's like, okay, yeah, no, this is about some other stuff. This ain't got nothing to do with me. So I think, that is a lesson I definitely had to learn. I'm kind of like you. I can be quite sensitive and, be really big on reading the room, but sometimes I just got to be like, I don't think that this is not about me. So I agree with you.
Yeah. Tina?
I think just probably being honest about that the most. I'm like super sensitive. So I cry really easy. I yell really easy. I have to be really careful about that. And I think that it's really helped us in our marriage a lot for me to be able to say, like, even before I make the mistake, right? Like, even before I project on him, what doesn't need to be on him.
Mm.
To say like, I'm like kind of in a thing right now, and
Mm.
I am having these feelings, and you might get some of them, and just know it's not about you, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if you can be self-aware ahead of time, and be honest about it, like that's the hardest part. It took me years to be able to say, like, this is my problem right now.
Mm.
You're the only person that I can kind of like give it to, and I know you're gonna still be here and still love me through it. So
Mm.
I need to be able to tell you right now
Mm.
that
Mm.
it's not you.
Mm.
This is definitely me, but I need somewhere to put it for a minute, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even asking permission, can you be my place? I'm going to put all these feelings right now that I don't know what to do with them,
Mm.
and just
Mm.
know that it's my thing, it's my issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Journal it out. Try to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
sometimes the best thing to do before you respond is just what's really going on here,
Yeah.
Lord. Get that
Exactly.
thing out on paper. Try to work it out before you try to work it out with him.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because like you ladies are saying, it's not only that everything he does is not about you, but everything you do is not about him. And it's very easy for us to reflect stuff onto other people. Like you say, we need someone to put it. And that's where a lot of blame comes in. I mean, look at Adam and Eve. When God came and was like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, it's her.
Exactly.
So we really like to kind of put stuff on other people and have a physical place to like take the blame and emotions and things like that. But when you take a step back and understand not to take it personally, especially if it's coming from your spouse, and to deal with yourself and not reflecting on your spouse, it gives you a much clearer mind. Again, we go back to outside the box. It gives you a wider perspective and a clearer mind to kind of deal with the actual problem from, instead of just kind of regurgitating all of this stuff that's going on in you without actually dealing with the problem. So absolutely. And learning that lesson was humbling, experience. And that's what God does. And so, that's what marriage is about. It's about owning yourself, seeing who you are outside of your own eyes, and admitting those things so that God can help you grow from them. It's not a condemnation thing. It's not for you to be perfect. It's not for your spouse to be perfect, but it's for you guys to learn together and grow together and stay together.
Yes.
If you do it the way you're supposed to do it. So we're going to wrap up here very soon. I know we're running past the time, but if you ladies have anything you want to let the viewers know about what you're doing, I'm going to put your websites up here at the bottom of the screen in a minute. So just let people know where they can find you, what you do, if you have any programs, any books, or anything like that. Who wants to go first?
Okay. I can go first. I'll be fast.
Okay.
I do have a website. It sounds like Sage is going to put it up. It's sweethoneysacrifice.com. And then that is where my blog is. And mainly I'd just love to invite any ladies, if you're single, if you're married, if whatever stage you're in. I do have a Facebook group for women. It is called Sweet Honey and Sacrifice, and we talk all things marriage, all things intimacy, all things Jesus. And so it's just a great place of community for wives to be able to come and converse and ask questions. And there is a no husband bashing rule. So that helps. So just come and check it out. Again, I do premarital, marriage, and intimacy coaching. So that kind of encompasses everything. It's all done from a biblical perspective. And I do work with wives alone as well as couples. If the husbands are not willing yet, our hope is that they're going to see you change and want to come join the change. So yeah, just come check it out. Come say hi. And my private messages are always open.
Yeah, and so I just put the link to your website and your Facebook group in the comments. So anybody who's interested in checking out Tina, we kind of have some plans to do some stuff a little bit later, so you guys can keep an eye out for that. But that is Tina and Nija. Did you want to let everybody know what you're doing? And I will also put your website in the bottom of the screen and in the comments as well while you're talking.
Awesome. Well, my company is Spark Her Blaze, where I serve as a clarity and purpose coach. I help women bridge the gap between where they are and where they want to be so that they can live more purposefully. And so essentially what I do is help women become their most purposeful selves. Yes, check out my website at sparkherblaze.com. I actually have a quiz on there that allows you to examine what is limiting you from living your most purposeful life. What is standing in the way of you living your most purposeful life? So it's a few short questions that you answer. It'll give you some action plans on what you can do, an assessment of sort of what might be going on. And I'd love for you to get on my mailing list, because I'm going to be teaching a free workshop in January on how to become your most purposeful self and have your most purposeful year in 2022.
Okay, wow, I like that. I might sign up for that one. With this newfound freedom I'm going to have very soon. I have a lot of stuff in my mind, and I probably need to sort through it and narrow it down and actually chart out a plan with what to do with my time. It seems kind of overwhelming right now. Like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have free time. But I know I will use it wisely. So a little direction will go a long way. So thank you, ladies, again. I think this was an excellent conversation. I know God is going to use it to bless some women. If you ladies, anybody watching, even men, you want to reach out and find out more about me or Naija or Tina, you can visit the links that are in the comments. And hopefully we do something later, later together, ladies, because this was really, really good.
Absolutely.
Like we could talk much longer. And
Definitely.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, no problem.
Likewise.
Thank you. Yeah. So thank you, ladies, so much. Thank you guys for watching. Please be sure to share this podcast with anybody you think might be interested, things like that. And you guys have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.